Hello Dub Nation, it's always a thrill to connect with you, especially as we're about to reveal the latest news that could shape the fate of our beloved Golden State Warriors. But before we dive into this whirlwind of information, let me make a friendly request. Show us some love by clicking the like button to strengthen our bond, and hey, if you are not subscribed yet, join our channel for a thrilling and emotional journey. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay ahead of the game.
The Warriors just made a decision that feels predictable, but it still hits hard. Jonathan Kuminga was ruled out for Tuesday's game against the 76ers. And because Tuesday is Golden State's last game before Thursday's trade deadline, the article says Kuminga may have already played his final game for the franchise. That's how loud the timing is. Kuminga's future has been under a microscope since the 23-year-old requested a trade as soon as he became eligible on January 15th. And now the deadline is forcing everything to feel immediate. Kuminga had gone 16 straight games without appearing in Steve Kerr's rotation. That door looked closed. Then everything changed when Jimmy Butler suffered a devastating knee injury that ended his season. And the article says that injury reopened a door that had been firmly shut. Kuminga responded by producing. The piece states he scored 30 points in 30 minutes across 2 games against Toronto and Dallas. But then he suffered a knee injury in the first half of the second game, and Tuesday will be his 5th straight absence since that moment. You might be thinking, if he's hurt, of course he's out. But the article ties this decision to the trade window because a deal is still described as a very real possibility in the next 72 hours. And it also shows where Golden State's focus is right now. The article says the Warriors are less worried about Kuminga's trade request and more focused on using him in a monumental package for Giannis. If Milwaukee signals a Giannis trade won't happen before the deadline, or if Giannis gets traded elsewhere like Miami, then the Warriors face a new question. Do they have another deal ready that still sends Kuminga out? The article says the Kings have always been seen as the main suitor for Kuminga. But it adds that Sacramento's acquisition of DeAndre Hunter on Saturday night complicates that picture. So there is a real chance, unless a Giannis blockbuster happens, that Golden State keeps Kuminga after the deadline because of Butler's injury. And that possibility is suddenly very real. Now the absences get even heavier. With Butler out for the season and Kuminga out again, the Warriors' offense gets hit even harder by the absence of Stephen Curry. The 37-year-old left late in the third quarter of Friday's loss to Detroit, and he is also out Tuesday due to a knee issue. Seth Curry remains out while recovering from a sciatic nerve injury, and starter Moses Moody is listed as probable for Tuesday because of knee soreness. Philadelphia will be without Paul George, who the article says was recently suspended 25 games for violating the league's anti-drug policy. So even the opponent comes in missing a major name. Quick reset. Kuminga is out Tuesday, the Warriors' last game before Thursday's deadline. He's missed 4 straight already, and Tuesday makes it 5. Here's the contrast the article sets up. Before Butler's injury, Kuminga was out of the rotation for 16 straight games. After Butler's injury, Kuminga got an opening and immediately produced with 30 points in 30 minutes across 2 games. Now he's hurt again, ruled out, and the deadline clock is squeezing everything at once. You might be thinking, does that mean he's definitely gone? The article doesn't say that. It says there's a real chance he stays, especially because Butler's injury changes what the Warriors may need to do. But it also says the Warriors are focused on a Giannis package, and that keeps the biggest door open. So here's the question. If the Giannis package doesn't happen before Thursday, do you think the Warriors should keep Kuminga after the deadline with Butler out for the season? One more reset. Kuminga requested a trade on January 15th, then got a short window after Butler's injury, then hurt his knee and has missed 5 straight, including Tuesday. Now the Warriors head into Thursday with Giannis still looming as the biggest possible swing. That's why this out designation matters. It's not just medical, it's strategic, and it's perfectly timed with the deadline. And that's what makes this week feel so tense for Golden State. Because you're not just watching one player's status. You're watching a front office try to keep every door open while the clock is screaming. Kuminga being ruled out on Tuesday protects the possibility of a deal in the next 72 hours. That's the practical part. But it also leaves the Warriors in a weird place on the floor, because the article makes it clear how thin the offense becomes without Butler and without Kuminga. And then it adds the bigger complication. Curry is out too. So while the trade deadline conversation is boiling, the Warriors are heading into their final pre-deadline game, missing the one thing they normally build everything around, their superstar. The article specifically notes Curry left late in the third quarter of Friday's loss to Detroit. Now he's out again Tuesday with a knee issue. That absence doesn't just change Tuesday night, it changes how urgent Thursday feels. Because if you're Golden State, you're trying to evaluate what you have, what you need, and what you can realistically chase. And doing that without Curry on the floor makes everything harder to read. The article also layers in more health uncertainty. Seth Curry remains out as he recovers from a sciatic nerve injury. And Moses Moody is listed as probable, but he's also dealing with knee soreness. So even the available group is carrying questions, and that matters when the team is trying to decide whether to go all in on something monumental or hold steady. That's why the Giannis angle dominates the story. The article says Golden State is currently less focused on the fact Kuminga requested a trade and more focused on using him as part of a monumental package for Giannis. That framing is everything, because it suggests the Warriors aren't treating like a standalone move right now. They're treating him like a lever in the biggest possible deal. And if that lever can't pull Giannis, the whole situation changes. That's why the article sets up the two outcomes so clearly. If Milwaukee signals that a Giannis trade isn't happening before the deadline, or if he gets moved elsewhere like Miami, then the Warriors are left searching for their next move. And the piece even says it will be interesting to see whether they have another deal in mind that still sends Kuminga out. That's the pressure point, because the Kings are mentioned as the main suitor for Kuminga. But the article says Sacramento's acquisition of DeAndre Hunter complicates that. So even the obvious path has a new obstacle. And when the obvious path gets messy, the fallback becomes more realistic. Keeping Kuminga after the deadline. The article says there's a real chance of that happening, especially because Butler's injury changes what Golden State needs for the rest of the season. If the Warriors can't land a blockbuster, holding on to talent starts to make more sense. And that brings the story full circle. Before Butler's injury, Kuminga had gone 16 straight games without seeing the floor in Kerr's rotation. After Butler's injury, he got a brief opening and produced, scoring 30 points in 30 minutes across 2 games. Then he got hurt. Now he's out again, right as the deadline arrives. So the Warriors are stuck balancing 3 things at once. Protect Kuminga's trade value, deal with a shorthanded offense, and chase a massive swing that might not even be available. Meanwhile, the article points out Philadelphia's own absence. The 76ers won't have Paul George, who the piece says was recently suspended for 25 games for violating the league's anti-drug policy. So even the opponent is missing a major name. But for Golden State, that's almost background noise this week. Because the headline isn't Tuesday's matchup. The headline is what Tuesday represents. The last game before the deadline. Kuminga still out. Curry out too. And a front office trying to decide whether the next 72 hours end with a franchise-altering move, or with Jonathan Kuminga still on the roster and an entirely different plan waiting on the other side of Thursday. The Golden State Warriors may have just been validated again for the decision that once felt heartbreaking, not giving Klay Thompson the contract he believed he deserved. On Sunday, reporter Mark Stein wrote in the Stein line that the Dallas Mavericks are exploring trade possibilities involving Thompson, Daniel Gafford, and D'Angelo Russell. And if that's true, it paints a pretty clear picture. What Golden State refused to commit to is already turning into someone else's problem to solve. For fans, it was never easy watching the first pillar of the dynasty walk away. And with whispers that Draymond Green could be next, the emotions only get louder. But even then, people could see the decline coming. The Mavericks believed a fresh start in Dallas would spark a revival. He's had moments, sure, but overall, it hasn't clicked, and the article makes clear it isn't all on him. The numbers are rough, Thompson is averaging 11.8 points in 22.2 minutes per game, both career lows. He's shooting 38.9% from the field, the first time in his career he's been below 40%, and 38% from three, another career low. Dallas even moved him to the bench early, starting him in only 8 of the 45 games he's played. And that's why this latest report doesn't feel random. The article argues it always seemed likely Dallas would explore moving him before the deadline, not only because of performance, even with him playing better lately, but because of the direction the franchise is heading. It frames the Mavericks as no longer the team that signed Klay in 2024 to chase a title with Luka Doncic. Instead, it suggests they should be shifting toward building around Cooper Flagg and doing what they can to secure a high draft pick, especially since after this year, they reportedly won't fully control their own first-round pick until 2031. That context matters, because it also explains why Thompson chose Dallas in the first place. He'll turn 36 in a few days, and the article says he picked the Mavericks because he wanted to join another championship-level team. But with Dallas moving in a different direction, it's becoming clearer that a title run there may not happen. And that opens the possibility of him being sent to a contender before the February 5 deadline. In a perfect world, the Warriors would have chased a 5th ring with Thompson, Draymond, and Stephen Curry together. In a perfect world, they'd also land Giannis Antetokounmpo. But the article lands on the reality every front office eventually faces. What you want isn't always what you can responsibly do. Thompson knows that better than anyone. The piece notes he wanted a 4-year, $100 million deal from Golden State. But what he ultimately got was a 2-year deal worth roughly $23 million. And the argument here is blunt. The Warriors were right not to give him what he felt he deserved, because it likely would have created yet another massive contract dilemma the front office would be scrambling to escape. That's the harsh part of roster building. A franchise can love you forever and still have to let you go. Klay will always be adored in the Bay. That won't change. But tough decisions are what separate nostalgia from winning, and the Warriors made one that looks more justified every time a report like this surfaces. And if you zoom out, this report isn't just about Klay. It's about the way NBA timelines move, even for legends. One year you're the missing piece on a contender, and the next year you're part of a trade conversation because the plan changed around you. That's what makes Stein's note land so heavily. Dallas isn't simply thinking about a trade. The report says they're exploring deals that include Klay, Daniel Gafford, and D'Angelo Russell, which signals something bigger. The Mavericks are evaluating their roster direction in real time as the deadline approaches. And when a team is willing to float multiple recognizable names, it usually means they're searching for a reset, not a tweak. That's the ripple effect. Because once that door is open, the entire league starts viewing those players differently. Not as long-term bets, but as pieces who could be moved quickly if the right offer appears. For Klay, it puts him in a strange emotional spot. He chose Dallas because he wanted to be part of another championship-level team. But the article says it's becoming clearer that a title won't happen there, at least not in the way he envisioned. So now the most realistic outcome might be the one that feels the most surreal, getting shipped out again and doing it before February 5th. Not because he demanded it in this story, but because the Mavericks' trajectory is pushing them there. And that's also why Warriors fans are reacting the way they are. On one hand, it's painful, because Klay will always be Klay in the Bay. He's not just a former player, he's a core part of what made the dynasty real. On the other hand, the report reinforces something fans already wrestled with when he left. The numbers have dipped. The article lays it out plainly. Career lows in points and minutes, a career low from the field, and a career low from three. It also reminds you Dallas made the decision early to bring him off the bench, with only 8 starts in 45 games. That isn't a condemnation of his entire career. It's a snapshot of where he is right now, and why teams start making different choices. And that circles right back to Golden State. Because the Warriors didn't just lose Klay, they avoided locking themselves into the exact kind of situation Dallas is now facing, trying to reconcile respect, reputation, and a shifting competitive plan. That's what the justified argument is really about. If Golden State had given him the 4-year, $100 million deal he wanted, the article suggests it would have turned into a contract problem the front office would be desperately trying to solve. Instead, the outcome was the opposite. The Warriors kept their flexibility, and the player who wanted more security ended up in a situation where his new team is already exploring trade possibilities. That's the kind of reality that makes front office decisions look cold, but also look correct. And the repercussions go beyond Klay himself. The article hints at the emotional tension still hovering over Golden State, with the idea that Draymond could be next. So for fans, this isn't just Klay news. It's another reminder that the dynasty era is being separated piece by piece, and every new report makes that separation feel more permanent. It forces the fan base to live in two timelines at once: the past, where Klay is untouchable, and the present, where even a franchise icon can become a name in deadline talks. And that's why the ending lands so hard. Klay will always be loved in the Bay Area. Nothing changes that. But the league doesn't run on love. It runs on fit, direction, and what a team believes it can realistically become. Right now, the Mavericks are being described as a team that needs to think about a different future. And if that future doesn't align with Klay's goal of joining another title run, then the most logical consequence is also the most painful one: a trade. Not because of who he was, but because of where Dallas is going, and where the league always goes when time starts winning. The Golden State Warriors are heading into a huge 3-day stretch with the entire league watching one storyline: the rumored pursuit of Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's the headline, no doubt. But no matter what happens with Giannis, deal or no deal, Golden State still has to survive the rest of the season. With Jimmy Butler done for the year after an ACL tear, the Warriors don't have the luxury of wasting depth. They're going to need almost every bench piece available and in rhythm if they want to stay competitive. And that's where a quieter, surprisingly important development comes in. Seth Curry is making progress. Seth has only played 2 games this season because of a sciatic nerve issue, but the article suggests he's trending toward a return soon. And if Golden State ends up thinner after a potential Giannis deal, having Seth available could matter a lot down the stretch, especially for a team that would suddenly be trying to manufacture offense wherever it can. Seth Curry's return could matter more than people realize. During the offseason, while the Warriors were dealing with the Jonathan Kuminga situation, Seth was repeatedly connected to Golden State as a free agent. And honestly, bringing the Stephen Curry-Seth pairing together always made sense. Golden State needed more shooting off the bench, and last season, Seth led the league in three-point percentage, knocking down an elite 45.6% from deep. His role was never expected to be massive. But a shooter that reliable doesn't need a massive role to change a game. Sometimes a few possessions are enough. Why this gets even bigger if Giannis happens? This becomes even more obvious if the Warriors actually complete a trade for Antetokounmpo. Either way, the article says Golden State would lose serious roster depth in a deal like that. At minimum, the contracts of Moses Moody and Buddy Hield would have to be included, and it's possible Kuminga would need to be moved too. If Giannis were traded to Golden State, the Warriors could realistically be looking at a bench group made up of Brandon Podziemski, Pat Spencer, Quinton Post, Will Richard, Gui Santos, and Gary Payton II. That group has energy and versatility, but adding a proven, ultra-reliable shooter like Seth would give it a cleaner identity. Spacing, quick-strike offense, and a weapon defenses can't ignore. Even if the Giannis deal doesn't happen, even if a Giannis trade doesn't happen before the deadline, the need doesn't disappear. The Warriors still need more scoring punch from the bench to stay afloat late in the season. And that's why Seth's recovery is such a big deal, because his shooting can lift lineups without needing the ball for long stretches. Of course, the article admits the season hasn't gone the way either Curry brother expected. But it also leaves room for something to shift soon. Because as Seth gets healthier, Golden State may finally get back a piece that could quietly stabilize everything around them. And that's the real takeaway here. Seth's return isn't being framed as a feel-good storyline. It's being framed as a practical one, because the Warriors' margin for error has shrunk. With Jimmy Butler out for the year, the article makes it clear Golden State can't afford to have optional pieces anymore. They need availability, continuity, and reliable production from the guys who are supposed to fill the gaps. Seth Curry has only played 2 games because of the sciatic nerve issue. So even the idea of him being close carries weight, because it represents a potential upgrade the Warriors don't have to trade for. And it matters even more because of how much uncertainty is packed into the next 3 days. The entire league is focused on the Giannis rumors, and the Warriors are right in the middle of that spotlight. But the article is careful. Whether the deal happens or not, Golden State still has to finish the season with whatever roster is left. That's where the bench conversation becomes so important. If the Warriors pull off a Giannis trade, the article says the cost is depth. At minimum, Moses Moody and Buddy Hield would have to be included, and Jonathan Kuminga could also be part of the equation. So you're not just adding a superstar, you're stripping away multiple rotation contracts at the same time. And the article even paints what that could look like. A bench built around Brandon Podziemski, Pat Spencer, Quinton Post, Will Richard, Gui Santos, and Gary Payton II. That's a group that can compete, but it also becomes a group that needs spacing to function cleanly. That's why Seth fits so naturally in the picture the article is drawing. The Warriors needed more shooting off the bench, and the article reminds you Seth led the league in three-point percentage last season at 45.6%. Even if his role is limited, that kind of shooting changes how defenses behave. It changes what lineups can survive and which lineups get targeted. And that's exactly the kind of edge Golden State might need if it's forced to play thinner. But the article also makes sure you understand this isn't only a Giannis trade story. Even if the Warriors don't land Antetokounmpo before the deadline, the need for more offensive punch from the bench remains. So Seth's return still matters in that scenario too, because the season didn't go the way either Curry brother expected, and the Warriors didn't expect to be dealing with a year-ending ACL tear to Butler either. But the way the article frames it, the next shift doesn't have to come from a blockbuster. It can come from getting back a piece who does one thing at an elite level. And if Seth is truly close, the ripple effect is simple. Golden State gets a trusted shooter back into the rotation. They get another way to manufacture points without overloading the same handful of players. And in a season where the Warriors may be forced to survive with less depth, that could be the difference between hanging on and slipping when the schedule tightens and every possession starts feeling heavier.